witnessing the quickest rise to greatness of any man in UFC history.
He's got that one-punch KO power. When that guy was going to fight MMA, I'm like, hold on, baby.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be some wild shit.
There's a timeline. You know there's a bad guy, and then there's this ultimate bad guy.
That was the impetus for Pereira to get back into mixed martial arts. He sort of awakened the beast with those comments.
In highlight reel is like nobody else's. Completely unique style, very technical, and very well thought out.
Alex won UFC 307 last Sunday. He's now speed running to the top of the UFC, but what caused this momentum? From struggling with adversity in life, how does a person transform into one of the most feared fighters in the world? He did not only conquer the mountain of combat sports, but with his willpower, he demolished it, starting from scratch. But here's the catch. Is that enough to stay on top in the upcoming match? Let's look into Pereira's UFC life, into why he's such a force in the organization, while also looking at the issues that could derail him. Can his ascent continue, or does the young manager of Pereira have his toughest fight ahead of him? Get ready, it's high-speed traveling from here. When you listen to the name Alex Pereira, one can easily be inclined to think of his knuckle-buster left hook, a 6'4" tall physique, or his composure inside the octagon. Most of the fans have no idea that, although Pereira is now the UFC's middleweight phenomenon, he used to be on the edge of death. Pereira grew up in São Bernardo do Campo, outskirts of the metropolitan area of São Paulo, Brazil, on the 7th of July, 1987. Growing up in one of the roughest areas of the city, Pereira had all the chances for a cruel and unsafe childhood. São Paulo, Brazil is famous for the danger, criminal activity, and poverty that are prevalent in all the area's slums. The future for many children arriving there is a life of hardship at the very least, or an early death at its worst. But from a very early age, Pereira was different from other boys. He was determined. He refused to be a passive onlooker of life affairs, and while living in the favelas of Brazil, he paid the price. Like any other teenager, Pereira got into alcoholism, and he could have easily ruined his whole life over it. He struggled with this addiction, and it seemed like his future would be like countless others, swallowed up by the streets.
Tive essa fase, né? E, pô, nesse tempo eu aprendi também muitas coisas, como beber, né? Foi uma coisa que me atrapalhou muito, né?
A bebida, mas no começo, já quantos anos tinha?
Não, eu assim, quando era moleque, mesmo até assim, antes de entrar na borracharia.
What changed? It was no Hollywood flash, no dramatic intervention, no life-altering speech. It was just a mindset thing, realizing I had more to give, Pereira said. Kickboxing taught him an outlet for his aggression and energy. He learned during training that this is what he wants to do, and it's a path to get out of the life that was dragging him down. The route to success was not so quick. It was hard to get sober, to focus, living in one of Earth's toughest places of all. These were the years when Pereira showed a lot of the grit that would become the fighter is. Physical toughness wasn't the only thing. Mental endurance was. He started his kickboxing career in local gyms, working with second-hand gear and very limited resources. The difference about Pereira was he had an inner fire that anything that he did it to the utmost excellence. Very few can do that. Pereira loved kickboxing, and more than that, he needed it to stay alive. Through absolute willpower and determination, he managed to claw his way up through the ranks of Brazilian kickboxing, and finally, his rising met the international scouts. But let's pause here for a second. Does early life struggle, poverty, addiction, seemingly hopeless odds make a person hard enough to be one of the most dangerous human beings on the planet? How does it leave scars that could come to light in the octagon? Pereira's ascent in MMA is a new one, but he's been kicking for nearly 2 decades. Inferno entered the keen kicking sports scene with an aggression that separated him immediately from his business partners. Pereira was not the type to step into the ring. He took and dominated it. Standing 6'4" with a hustling, imposing frame. He went from zero to hero very quickly in the sport early on and won multiple championships in the Glory Kickboxing promotion as a 2-division champion. Pereira was not the type to step into the ring. He took and dominated it. His most famous weapon? The left hook. A punch so punchable and right that it became his signature. The fighters that previously boasted to be the best strikers couldn't do so anymore against him. His raw power wasn't the only reason he was so unique, though. He had perfect timing and perfect technique as well.
And there's the kick, loads the hips, boom, left hook comes through like a bullwhip. Unbelievable sound, listen, like a whip.
Echo through the...
But here's where it gets interesting. Until he was making the switch, MMA fans and analysts were doubtful of Pereira considering his dominance in kickboxing. Mixed martial arts is not the same as kickboxing. It's not who can strike harder or faster in MMA that counts. It is who can wrestle, grapple, and have the ability to survive on the ground. So the question was posed. Is Pereira's stand-up game capable of carrying on into the chaotic, multi-dimensional world of the UFC? It was initially unclear. But did Pereira have a striking game to show for it? Or was it just in his mind that he did? His wrestling. But could he defend against submissions? Over his transition to MMA, these questions hung heavily upon him. Pereira nevertheless had an edge on mental toughness, the result of his brutal childhood and sharpened over many years of combat. He wasn't there just to be a kickboxer stepping into the octagon for fame. He was a fighter, and that all made a difference. Would that background of kickboxing, which Pereira has fought some of the best strikers in the world, be enough to guarantee long-term success in the UFC? Or was it the complex and multi-dimensional nature of MMA that would reveal his weakness one day? Let's keep exploring. The world of MMA is ruthless. It's a place where even the most talented athletes can fall apart under the immense pressure of high-level competition. For Pereira, the transition from kickboxing to mixed martial arts wasn't just a professional challenge, it was a personal test. Pereira made his UFC debut in November 2021 against Andreas Michailidis, and to say that it was an eye-opener would be an understatement.
Tonight, for the UFC debut of Alex Pereira.
All right, you ready, sir?
He's been all in on MMA for the last...
Boxing, it won't take him long, but he's got to show that he can defend, and he's got to show that he can compete in all facets.
Alex Pereira, the devastating striker, having to fight a guy who's a superior grappler.
And John, honestly, that's what I was speaking to with all the clinch and the grab.
While Michailidis managed to take Pereira down in the first round, something clicked in Pereira during the second. As soon as they were back on their feet, Michailidis became another victim of Pereira's infamous left hook. In one swift, brutal motion, Pereira sent his opponent crashing to the canvas, marking his arrival in the UFC with a thunderous knockout. From that moment, Pereira's star skyrocketed. Fans were buzzing with excitement. Could this kickboxing champion become the next big thing in the UFC's middleweight division? What made his debut even more interesting was the fact that Pereira had previously fought and defeated Israel Adesanya in kickboxing, the reigning UFC middleweight champion at the time. The MMA world began to drool at the thought of a potential rematch between these two elite strikers. But Pereira wasn't resting on his crown. He knew that MMA was more than just striking. He had to sharpen his battle takedown defense and his submission escapes if he wanted to survive in this unforgiving arena. Training alongside some of the sport's top coaches, Pereira threw himself into mastering these areas. But here's the big question. Could Pereira truly bridge the gap between his kickboxing skills and the multifaceted demands of the MMA? Sure, his striking was elite, but was it enough to fend off the division's top wrestlers? In interviews, Pereira has talked about his connection to his indigenous Brazilian roots. He sees himself as a warrior, and that mentality is evident in every punch he throws. When Pereira steps into the cage, it's not just a fight. It's a battle for survival, a test of who can endure the most and who can impose their will on the other. His warrior mentality is perhaps the most visible in his resilience. Pereira doesn't start in the face of adversity. Whether he's being pressured into a fight or dealing with life's hardships, he stays composed. His ability to remain calm under pressure is one of the keys to his success. He doesn't rush into exchanges recklessly. Instead, he waits for his opportunity, and when it comes, he capitalizes in a way few others can. This patience, combined with his deadly power, makes Pereira a lethal threat in any fight. But let's be honest here, does mental toughness alone make someone unstoppable? At the elite level of competition, every fighter is tough, every fighter is resilient. The question is whether Pereira's warrior mentality is enough to overcome the technical gaps in his MMA game. While Alex Pereira is undoubtedly one of the most fearsome strikers the UFC has ever seen, no fighter is without weaknesses, and Pereira's transition to MMA, though impressive, has revealed some glaring vulnerabilities that his opponents will look to exploit. First and foremost is Pereira's wrestling. While he has improved his takedown defense and ground game since entering the UFC, these areas remain his biggest weaknesses. In a division filled with elite wrestlers and grapplers, Pereira's lack of experience on the mat could prove to be his undoing. Another potential issue is Pereira's cardio. In kickboxing, fights are shorter and the pace is different from that of a 5-round MMA contest. While Pereira has shown that he can go the distance, questions remain about his ability to maintain his explosiveness and power deep into a fight. In his UFC run so far, we haven't seen him in many drawn-out wars, so it's still unclear how well he can handle a grueling 5-round bout against a top-tier opponent. Finally, there's the mental pressure. While Pereira has demonstrated incredible mental toughness throughout his career, the UFC is a different beast. So here's the million-dollar question. Will Pereira's strengths be enough to keep him on top in the upcoming match, or will his weaknesses eventually catch up to him?
Fleet of foot. It's not just speed with the right hand. From Khalil Rountree Jr. And this is his first champion. There it is again. That one. Much
Alex Pereira has defended his light heavyweight title 3 times in 2024, and a highly anticipated clash at UFC 307 squared off against Khalil Rountree Jr. on 5th October 2024. The pressure was on to beat the Brazilian powerhouse Rountree on a 5-fight win streak. From the get-go, both fighters rocked each other with big shots, neither one looking worse for wear, and it became apparent that Pereira's precision and calculated aggression was the more noteworthy display. Pereira, however, retained his title when he went the additional mile to come out victorious, while being knocked out by a thunderous left hook in the third, cementing his place as the division leader, and fans wonder how he managed to come out victorious despite that. As we look to the future, one thing is certain. Alex Pereira's story is still just beginning. His move from middleweight to light heavyweight only adds to the suspense surrounding his career. Will he reign as king of the middleweight division before giving new challenges and testing the limits, or will he find new challenges and test his limits? Will Pereira's weaknesses take precedence against the odds, or will he defeat them in his favor? Does he have everything necessary to stay on top or become the next fighter that is short-lived? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.